For centuries, the opening lines of the Bible have been presented through a simple, almost childlike lens. In our collective imagination, nurtured by Sunday school flannel graphs and well-meaning sermons, the story begins in a pristine, empty void. God, in a moment of unparalleled creative power, speaks, and a perfect universe springs into existence over 6 literal 24-hour days. The stage is set, flawless and new, for the grand entrance of the first man and woman in a verdant paradise. This is the story most of us know. But what if that story is dangerously incomplete? What if the sanitized version of Genesis chapter 1 has caused us to miss a narrative that is vastly older, infinitely more violent, and profoundly more terrifying than we have ever been told? What if there is a staggering, catastrophic mystery hiding in plain sight, concealed within the grammar of the very first 2 verses of the Bible? There is a vast, unrecorded chasm of geological and chronological time, a dark space between Genesis 1 verse 1 and Genesis 1 verse 2. Theologians have a name for it: the gap theory, or the ruin reconstruction theory. This is not a new or fringe idea. It is a profound theological position held by serious scholars for generations who dared to look closer at the original Hebrew text. This investigation will pull back the veil on the darkest, most ancient frontiers of biblical theology. We will uncover the terrifying truth about the pre-Adamic world. We will deconstruct the original Hebrew, explore a primeval Eden made not of plants, but of fire and stone, and expose the apocalyptic prehistoric rebellion of the greatest archangel God ever created. And in doing so, we will answer the ultimate, chilling question: who or what actually lived on planet Earth before God breathed life into the lungs of Adam? The entire paradigm shift, the key that unlocks this ancient mystery, is found in a meticulous forensic analysis of the original Hebrew of Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Most believers read these verses as a single, seamless thought. They describe 2 vastly different states of existence, separated by an unimaginable catastrophe. Verse 1 is a declaration of absolute, perfect creation. It reads, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." The Hebrew word used for created here is bara. This is a verb of immense theological weight. In the Old Testament, bara is used exclusively for the creative work of God. Man cannot bara. It signifies the divine act of bringing something new into existence out of absolutely nothing. What theologians call creatio ex nihilo. It implies perfection, majesty, and divine order. Genesis 1, verse 1 is a statement of a finished, flawless work. But then the narrative slams into a violent, jarring, and completely unexpected wall. Verse 2 says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep." To the casual English reader, this sounds like God simply started with a messy, dark lump of unformed material and began to shape it. But the Hebrew language paints a picture of absolute, terrifying devastation. The phrase translated "without form and void" is the Hebrew idiom tohu wabohu. This is not a description of something in its raw, embryonic state. This is a description of a ruin. Throughout the rest of the Old Testament, these specific words are exclusively used to describe the aftermath of a catastrophic, apocalyptic judgment. For example, in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23, The prophet sees a vision of a land obliterated by God's fierce anger and describes it using the exact same phrase, tohu wabohu. But the most explosive piece of linguistic evidence is the verb. The Hebrew verb haya, translated as was, in the phrase, "the earth was without form," can be, and often is, translated more accurately as became. It signifies a change in condition. A more precise, literal rendering of the original text would read, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But the earth became a ruined, desolate wasteland, and blinding darkness fell upon the face of the raging, chaotic deep." This forces a monumental theological question. The God of the Bible is a God of perfect order, light, and beauty. Why would he create a dark, flooded, chaotic wasteland? The prophet Isaiah answers this question with sledgehammer force in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18. He declares that God, who formed the earth and made it, he has established it. He did not create it in vain, tohu. He formed it to be inhabited. The scriptural mathematics are undeniable and inescapable. God did not create the earth as a tohu wabohu. He created it perfectly to be inhabited. Yet by the time we get to Genesis 1 verse 2, it is a tohu wabohu. Therefore, something of unimaginable violence must have occurred between verse 1 and verse 2. Some cosmic event caused the original, perfect creation to collapse into darkness, judgment, and ruin. To find out what, we must leave Genesis and travel into the prophetic visions of the Old Testament. To understand what caused this prehistoric apocalypse, we must journey to the prophetic books of Ezekiel chapter 28 and Isaiah chapter 14. Here, the Bible peels back the curtain on the primeval history of the earth. Long before Adam was ever formed from the dust. In Ezekiel, the prophet is told to deliver a lamentation against the human king of Tyre. But the language quickly elevates far beyond any mortal man, describing a breathtaking, supernatural entity of unimaginable splendor. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12 says, "You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty." Verse 14 identifies him explicitly. "You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones." This being, universally understood by theologians to be Lucifer before his fall, was the highest-ranking angelic creation. But the most shocking revelation is his location. Verse 13 explicitly states, "You were in Eden, the garden of God." But this is not the Eden of Adam and Eve. There are no apple trees, no rivers, no organic vegetation described here. Instead, Ezekiel describes a blinding, terrifyingly beautiful mineral garden. He writes, "Every precious stone was your covering: the sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with gold." This was the headquarters of the pre-Adamic world. This was the original Eden. God had established a perfect, crystalline civilization on the original earth, and he had placed it under the authority of the greatest, most majestic archangel ever created. Lucifer was not some celestial choir director. He was given a primeval dominion. He was the ultimate high priest and king over a spectacular, prehistoric, earthly kingdom, ruling from a mountain of God that shone with the brilliance of fiery, precious stones. This was his throne. This was his domain. The prophet Isaiah corroborates this vision of a pre-human ruler. In Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, he laments, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations." Notice the language. He was cut down to the ground. His sphere of influence was terrestrial. He weakened nations, plural, suggesting a populated kingdom. The Bible is painting a clear picture of an ancient pre-human civilization on planet Earth. A world of dazzling beauty, governed by the most powerful created being in the universe. It was a perfect kingdom under a perfect ruler, established on a perfect planet. But a kingdom, by definition, requires subjects. So who was Lucifer ruling over in this ancient pre-human world? While the Bible is deeply mysterious on the specific biology of this pre-Adamic race, a profound clue is hidden in the New Testament's careful distinction between two types of fallen spirits: fallen angels and demons. Modern theology often conflates the two, but the Gospels present them as distinct entities with vastly different behaviors and limitations. Fallen angels, like those described in Jude verse 6, are the celestial beings who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode. They are powerful, cosmic principalities who operate in heavenly places, as Paul describes in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. They possess their own celestial bodies and seem to operate on a cosmic scale. They are the high command of Satan's kingdom. Demons, however, are presented very differently. Throughout the Gospels, they are consistently depicted as restless, disembodied terrestrial spirits. They are agonizingly, desperately obsessed with finding physical bodies to inhabit, whether human or animal. In Mark chapter 5, a legion of demons begs Jesus not to send them out of the country, but to allow them into a herd of pigs. They are earthbound and body-obsessed. The terrifying theological proposition of the reconstruction model is that demons are not fallen angels. They are the disembodied, earthbound spirits of the corrupt, pre-Adamic race that existed under Lucifer's primeval earthly reign. They were the citizens of that original world, the nations that Lucifer weakened with his pride. They had physical bodies, but lost them in the great cataclysm that destroyed their world. This perfectly explains their frantic, unending search for a physical host. They are spiritual refugees, forever tied to the planet of their origin and their judgment, longing for the physical form they once possessed. This primeval kingdom, with its angelic overlord and its terrestrial population, existed for an unknown period of time, but it was not to last. Ezekiel chapter 28 verse 15 states of Lucifer, "You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you." His heart became corrupted by his own blinding beauty and wisdom. Isaiah chapter 14 reveals the nature of that iniquity. The 5 famous "I will" statements of Lucifer. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. This was not just pride. This was the first cosmic rebellion. He convinced a third of the angelic host, as suggested in Revelation chapter 12, and his earthly subjects to join him in a violent coup against the throne of the Almighty.
The result was not a negotiation. It was the ultimate prehistoric apocalypse. God's response to this primordial rebellion was absolute, swift, and devastating. He did not send a gentle rain to cover the earth. He unleashed a catastrophic judgment that makes the subsequent flood of Noah pale in comparison.
This event is what some theologians call Lucifer's flood.
The prophet Jeremiah was given a terrifying, time-traveling vision of this exact pre-Adamic judgment. In Jeremiah chapter 4, beginning in verse 23, the prophet looks back into the deep recesses of time and records what he sees. I beheld the earth, and indeed it was without form and void, tohu wabohu. He uses the exact same language as Genesis 1 verse 2 to describe a planet post-judgment. He continues, I beheld the heavens, and they had no light. This is a critical detail. During Noah's flood, the sun, moon, and stars still gave their light. But in this cataclysm, God completely extinguished all light from reaching the planet, plunging it into absolute, suffocating darkness. Jeremiah's vision intensifies. I beheld the mountains, and indeed they trembled, and all the hills moved back and forth. I beheld, and indeed there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens had fled.
The phrase, no man, is crucial.
This proves that Jeremiah is not seeing the flood of Noah, where 8 humans survived. He is seeing a judgment that resulted in the complete annihilation of the planet's inhabitants. Then comes the most chilling evidence of a destroyed civilization. I beheld, and indeed the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all its cities were broken down at the presence of the Lord by his fierce anger.
Jeremiah is looking at the archaeological ruins of the pre-Adamic world, smashed into oblivion by the fierce anger of God.
This was the absolute freezing and flooding of the planet. God completely extinguished the sun, wrapped the rebel planet in a suffocating blanket of deep, frozen water and absolute darkness, instantly destroying the pre-Adamic biological civilization and plunging Lucifer's glorious, crystalline kingdom into a frozen, chaotic ruin. This vision perfectly and precisely explains the exact, terrifying state of the earth as we find it in Genesis 1, verse 2. Completely submerged, frozen, dark, and a desolate wasteland. Tohu wabohu. The original earth, once a jewel box of light and life, was now a cosmic tomb, floating silently in the blackness of space, awaiting its next chapter. This hidden history of a prehistoric ruin and reconstruction completely transforms our understanding of the rest of the Bible. When God finally moves in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, declaring, "Let there be light," he is not creating the universe from scratch. He is initiating a magnificent 6-day divine reclamation project. He is beginning the process of restoring a planet that had been ravaged by war and judgment. The 6 days of Genesis are not a story of creation ex nihilo. That happened in verse 1. The 6 days are a story of recreation. God is thawing the global ice sheet, pulling back the chaotic waters, commanding the sun and moon to once again pierce through the millennial darkness, and terraforming a devastated crime scene to prepare it for a brand new manager. This understanding sheds brilliant light on one of the most revealing commands given to the first humans. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, God blesses Adam and Eve and says, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." But many older translations, like the King James Version, correctly render a specific Hebrew word as
replenish. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. You cannot replenish something that was never full or plenished to begin with. The Hebrew word male carries the strong connotation of refilling something that was previously filled. God was commanding Adam to refill the earth that had become empty. Adam was placed on a newly restored planet as a replacement king, designed in the image of God to reclaim the exact territory that Lucifer had forfeited through his rebellion. This profoundly and perfectly explains why the serpent was already waiting in the garden the moment Adam and Eve arrived. Lucifer was not a random, uninvited intruder. He was the bitter, dethroned former ruler of the planet. He was watching a new creature made of common dirt being handed the keys to his ancient kingdom. The Garden of Eden was not just a peaceful paradise.
It was a divine beachhead, an invasion point established by God on a contested planet. The story of Genesis is not a simple morality tale. It is the opening salvo in a high-stakes military campaign. God placed humanity directly onto the front lines of an ancient cosmic war zone. The fall of man was not the beginning of the war. It was the loss of the first critical battle in the long and bloody campaign for the reclamation of planet Earth. Understanding this pre-Adamic conflict reframes the entire biblical narrative. It ceases to be a disjointed collection of stories and becomes one magnificent, brutal, and glorious saga of cosmic redemption and territorial reclamation. The fall of Adam was not a plan B. It was the tragic forfeiture of humanity's divine mandate to rule and reclaim the earth from its usurper. From that moment on, the entire Old Testament chronicles God's relentless plan to win back what was lost. The calling of Abraham, the formation of Israel, the giving of the law, all of it was part of God's strategy to establish a people through whom he could bring forth the ultimate champion, the true king who would succeed where the first Adam failed. That champion is Jesus Christ, who the Apostle Paul calls the last Adam in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. When Jesus came to earth, he was not just a great moral teacher. He was the rightful king, launching a direct invasion into enemy-occupied territory. His miracles were not just acts of compassion. They were demonstrations of his superior authority over the domain of the ruler of this world, as he called Satan in John chapter 14, verse 30. When Jesus cast out demons, he was evicting the disembodied spirits of that ancient, rebellious race, demonstrating his authority over the original inhabitants who had sided with Lucifer. His death on the cross was the decisive battle, and his resurrection from the dead was the declaration of ultimate victory. He defeated death and disarmed the principalities and powers, triumphing over them publicly. The story that began with a ruined planet in Genesis 1 verse 2 does not end until Revelation chapter 21, when John sees a new heaven and a new earth. This is the final, complete restoration. This is the ultimate fulfillment of the reclamation project that began when God said, "Let there be light." The war is not over yet, but the victory is already secured by the blood of the Lamb. The Bible is the story of our King, who invaded a rebel planet to redeem a captive people and reclaim his rightful dominion, so that one day he might make all things new.
If this exploration into the deep truths of Scripture has enlightened you,
We invite you to subscribe to our channel for more foundational, doctrinal content. Please like this video and share it with others who are seeking to understand the Bible in its full depth and power. And in the comments below, let us know how this perspective on Genesis has impacted your understanding of God's Word.